Today we're going to draw a deer. So I got some reference photos and now I'm sketching out on my workbench kind of a rough idea of scale. So this gives me an idea how big I want the piece to be when it's finished. So once I get this going, I'm going to sketch it all out, get my detail, then we'll move on to metal bending. Now it's time to start adding the pieces. As I'm laying this piece out and marking it so I can see where I want to bend it. And just using a little chalk, bend it, and I'm going to use this bar. It has a hole in it, so I can stick it down in the hole in the vise, and with this extra hole, use that as leverage to bend this piece. Now let's get the welder turned on so we can get this thing put together. So I got everything set up, kind of roughly laid out. I'm going to start tacking the pieces together here. I just want to kind of hold this piece in place, and then I'm going to just weld some little spot welds once I get it adjusted, because I may need to bend it. I may have to move some stuff, so I always do light welds to start with. So this is a pretty simple process of putting this thing together. Now that I have both these legs tacked together, I'm going to take this other piece I bent to make kind of the backbone and the tail. I'm just going to kind of hold it here and tack it in place to see if I can't get these two sides put together. Now that I have the back part of the body done, I'm going to go ahead and start tacking in these pieces that I'm making to finish out the front. This kind of helps with scale since it's hard to bend the piece and make the whole piece at one time. As I keep adding pieces, I'm going to go ahead and roughly tack on the legs here. I've got this leg piece, so I'm going to tack it here. I may end up cutting it back off and repositioning it just to make sure I have them in the right place. This is kind of an important placement part. So once I get it welded here, I've got it going, so now I can stand it up and look at it. Now that we have the rough structure put together, let's go ahead and take this piece of metal and we're going to tack the body to the metal as a stand to kind of help hold it up while we work on it. Here we have the body standing up on the stand, so now I've got some pieces. I'm going to try and adjust these little pieces I'm bending to kind of make the other shapes of the head. I'm kind of hold this up in place. I'm probably going to end up having to cut this back off and grind it, but that's alright. So I'm going to just tack weld it in place here. And then kind of step back and look at everything. I'll get both sides done. I've got this other piece already cut, so let me hold it up there and tack it in place as well. As I look at this piece, I'm thinking that the head may be a little long, so I'll end up cutting some of this off, I think. I got another piece and bent it to add a little more dimension to the body here. I'm holding it in place to kind of tack it. And this is just going to add some dimension. It's actually adding dimension to the legs and to the body as it goes along. So I'm going to keep adding pieces here to kind of get this thing kind of finished out as a structure. Alright, I've got the body where I'm happy with it, so let's move on to the antler. I've got an antler that I found that as an example to kind of build from. But I use this wire that's off of kind of a heavy gauge fencing. So I can actually take 3 pieces of it. I get it tacked together so I can make adjustments to it. But I start at the bottom end where it's going to attach to the head, and then I go from there and bend everything as I need to, welding it along the way, kind of shaping it to make each antler separate. So I'm going to have 2 of these. Got this bent piece of wire here that I'm kind of putting around the end of the 3 pieces where I welded them. I'm going to kind of melt these into the other 3 pieces, and this is going to make the knob right around the horn where it connects to the head. This is kind of a nice detail. It gives it a little bit of extra realistic look. With the ends roughly put together, I come back now and start adjusting and using a pair of pliers, whatever I've got. So I've got these pliers here. I'm going to grab a hold of this, trying to make sure I bend them the same but opposite, which actually makes it a little harder to do. So I got to make a left and a right version of the horn. So I just kind of bend these by hand and use whatever method I need. I just kind of get a rough start on the bends so I can get this thing working. It took a little time, but I've got the horns kind of roughly bent to the shapes I want. And so now I'm placing them on the deer, kind of looking at it, making sure I like where it's at. I'm going to tack it in place now. I've got the antlers in place, and I've been looking at them, kind of eyeballing to see what looks level and straight. And so now I'm gonna come back, and I've got this, kind of need to bend this one here. Trying to adjust them side to side to make sure they both look the same, and then welding back the gaps. I kind of weld it between to make this thing work. So it kind of, as I work, I'm building out these antlers from the inside to the outside, trying to make sure they're consistent. Just kind of using this pliers here to roughly measure. I'm just trying to adjust them so they're similar. They don't have to be the same, but just similar. And so, like I said, I'm just kind of working through the process of getting these things straightened out. Now that I'm happy with the shape I've been working on, I've been bending everything into place. I'm going to go back and start welding. Kind of do some adding welding. It's adding to all these joints to kind of finish them out. See, my ground broke loose. I got to tack back down my bar. So now, one of the things, this is frustrating. One of the things that's frustrating with these is sometimes they move around on my table, and if I don't have them down, they don't ground good, it won't weld. So this piece is a little bit difficult, but now that I'm getting it put together, it's looking better. I'm happy with the shape, and you can see how this is filling in these kind of joints. And then once I get them ground back out, they're going to look more like an antler. Also go back and add welding to all of these pieces. Alright, I've got the rough shape done, so now I'm going to move on. I'm using some paper here, and I've got a tape that I'm putting on the neck, because the tape's a little more flexible than the paper. But what I'm going to do is I'm making a template that I can kind of put on here, take back off, and then cut out of metal to actually make the skin for the deer. Now I have my patterns done. I'm just kind of laying them out on this piece of metal I have that I'm going to trace it and then cut it out with the plasma cutter. So this is just a matter of going around the edges with this pencil, kind of tracing out the shape. It doesn't have to be exact because it just has to be close. So I'll get these cut out and we'll get them put on. With my rough pieces cut out, cleaned up, I start bending this thing and then kind of fitting it on the head here to make sure that I've got kind of the shape and that it's going to fit. This is a lot of trial and error, so I just keep, kind of bending, smashing, trying to work out the shape to get the actual face shape the correct size. So just a lot of going back and forth, kind of adjusting. Once I get everything kind of roughly put in place, I might start tacking it and then adjust it with the hammer. I got the face and neck put in kind of place, so now I'm gonna work on the sides here. I've got to adjust this. Just using this piece of metal I've got welded into and adjusted in my vise, so it's kind of a anvil type piece. Allows me to bend this, so you can see I can bend it here and push it back in place, make sure everything's lining up, then go back and forth between the anvil and my workbench. Just kind of adjusting the leg piece that's going to bend in place, and small movements. It doesn't take a lot of major movements to get this thing to work. So now I've got it kind of adjusted, and I keep going back and forth. You can see I'm trying to make it fit. Down here at the front I need a little more on the leg so I can get this thing to work better. So now I've got it bent, I think a little bit better. Yeah, that's looking good, so I think that'll work out better. I'll get it tacked in place here and we can get going with the rest of it. So with the welder here, I'm adjusting this piece, putting it on, kind of getting it lined up with where I want it. And now I'm gonna let's go ahead and tack it here. This should hold it in place so I can adjust it a little bit. Kind of skipped ahead here a little bit, and you can see that I've welded quite a bit of this in place. I just keep going around the edges of it, adjust everything, tapping it with my hammer here, kind of getting it adjusted, and then I add beads back to just kind of weld it to the frame underneath. Trying not to get it too hot in one place, I just kind of work my way around the edges. I'll come back and grind most of this back off and adjust it as I go. Cut him back off the base so I can do a little more grinding and cleaning up on him when I was working on him. I didn't show that part, but here I've got some pieces, and this is kind of the tedious part where I go back and add little bitty pieces to kind of fill in all the gaps between the bigger sheet metal pieces. Just kind of welding this here, spot welding it as I did before. And then once I get these welded in place, I'll grind everything back down. Turn the welder settings way down to get a less powerful arc. And then I'm kind of dragging this pretty fast. And it's just adding a texture. So it's a lot of work and it's kind of tedious, but it gives a pretty nice result at the end. It covers up all my seams, gives me a nice texture. So I kind of follow the contour of my drawings that I'm looking at, or my reference photos, kind of putting it on in the direction the fur would lay on the actual deer. So it's giving a little bit of detail here and there. This is really just kind of surface welds. They're not very deep. So some of these actually flake back off when you grind them with the flap disc, but it's a neat process. It actually works out pretty good. Continue this process, and you can see here that I've got quite a bit of it done on both sides, and so now I'm going back and just adding a little bit more in places to kind of give it more of the directional feel to it. And then I'm going to come back and I'll clean everything up. But this is the part that takes a little bit of time. It's just you know, weld a little bit, step back, look at it, weld a little bit more until I'm kind of happy with the shape that's coming out. On this piece of metal, and he fits really good on it. I kind of ground down some of the edges of it. I think I'm going to mount him on this and put some decorative finish. So I'm just kind of tacking him in place here, because I'm going to have to take him back off of this so I can clean everything up once I get the kind of some plants or foliage put in place underneath him. This is just a temporary hold. I'm going to use this piece of expanded metal here. I'm going to cut it down a little bit and kind of make some foliage out of it. I'm just kind of cutting some of these pieces loose, and I'll bend this back together. I think it's going to work. You just got to be careful doing this. Make sure you have a tight grip on that piece of metal, because that grinding disc will throw it if you don't when it catches. This expanded metal is kind of dangerous to cut. You got to be very careful doing it. with all the pieces, I just kind of smashed them together with the hammer and got them bent into a shape. Now I'm just kind of grinding the bottom of it off, and I'll grind the edges and the tips. This is just going to kind of be like a piece of brush that I'm going to put underneath the deer. I think it's going to look pretty good. I got a couple of these pieces made here, so now I'm kind of laying them out where I think they're going to look good, and I'm probably just going to tack it in place. I think it looks good here, so a couple of quick tacks, kind of hold it in place for now. I've got a smaller piece I made out of a different size of expanded metal. I think I'm going to cover this hole with, so I think I'll go ahead and tack him in place, and I'm probably going to add a few more pieces of foliage under here just to give it a little detail to set it apart from the base. This is a pretty easy process. It's just a matter of making something. It doesn't have to be perfect because it is actually replicating brush, so just get it welded in place for now and make sure we like how it's looking. To finish up the base, I'm going to go ahead and cut him back off of it. So it's going to be a little easier to finish the base and finish grinding him, get everything cleaned up. And then I'll put it back together once I have everything done and I'm happy with it, and probably mount it to the rock. So then I'll be able to weld him back onto this base because it's only the couple of feet that actually attach. Now that I've got everything cleaned up, I found me a rock I think is going to work as the base. So kind of working on the layout here to see if I think this is going to work. I'm having to kind of prop it because I'll end up bending this piece of metal, but just kind of getting an idea here if I like the way the shape of the rock is with the deer sitting on it. Is it big enough? Is it not big enough? I've got several pieces of rock, so I'm going to keep doing this process till I find the one that I think is going to look the best with this piece here. I found the rock I think I'm going to use, so I always start by grinding the bottom flat, trying to put some flat spots so it'll sit on a table nicely. So this is just a diamond bit stuck into the grinder here, so I'm able to grind this off. You can see I have the wind's blowing it away because I have a fan blowing on it because you don't want to breathe in all this dust. I have a mask and a fan to try and get all this dust out of the shop. So I just keep grinding these pieces down, setting it on the table. And it kind of works setting it on my dirty workbench because then I can see where the actual flat spots are, so I can keep adjusting it. So I'll get this adjusted down so it'll sit on the table, then we'll clean it up and figure out how to mount the deer to it. Sitting on the table good here. I've got the base fixed. I'm start with one hole. Which is drilled. It's gonna take a little bit. I'm gonna test fit my base. Let's make sure the base fits. I've got 2 pins on the bottom, so I'm gonna drill 2 holes in this rock that'll hold the metal piece to the rock. Now that everything's cleaned up, let's add a little bit of clear satin finish to it to protect it. I don't like anything to rust on these, so I kind of like the finish. And you can see when I add the satin finish, it actually darkens up some of the marks from the welding, which kind of gives it a nice look. Now that I have everything kind of adjusted where I like it, I'm going to go ahead and weld the deer back to the base. And so here I've stuck a piece of paper under the back so it won't leave splatter marks on top of the rock because they're kind of hard to get off. So I'm just going to hold him here in place, adjust him where I think he's good, and I'm going to tack him. make sure I got him up straight. I'll step back and take a look at him here so I can take a look at him. Oops, my paper's on fire, hang on. So, get rid of that. Now he's looking alright. I think I've got him pretty close to level. He's straight, so I think he'll look good on this rock. I've cleaned the rock, that's why it's kind of dark here. I'm just making sure everything still fits. He sits down in the holes nice. I'll epoxy him in those holes with some glue to keep him on the rock later. But I'm just making sure that I like how he looks and like he's sitting on there correctly. Got this deer sculpture finished. Turned out really nice. Everything looks good. It's mounted on this heavy rock. It's a nice shape. He's actually a pretty good size too. So this is going to be a nice sculpture. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.